Okay. All righty, we're live, actually. And I guess I'll turn that around. You know how to operate.
Would you like, I got the speaker in the car if you want that? Because it is hard to hear outside of this tiny circle.
If everybody could pull on in closer, please. William. Don't. Somebody tell William don't do that. Let the people be.
He's a grown
Let the
man.
people be. That's more of a testament to what this city hasn't done than what it has done. Because if anything, the city should have told the operators of that building across the street that at least one night out of the year have a little civic responsibility and some respect. And yes, some compassion. Yeah, y'all know I got a big mouth, so I just don't read it. I'll be all right as far as bringing, a little, amplification over. We're good to go. If I can't be heard, somebody raise your hand. And Deacon, please, if I go too long, tap the watch. I'm watching.
Yes, sir.
Good to see so many that have gathered with us over the last 8 years, 9 years. 9 years of shared trauma. 9 years that we were, as we remember, for many of us that were here, the most, I don't even know what the word is for. What's the word I'm looking for, man? The most horrendous, horrible, horrific, traumatic day of my life, and for many here in the country. I waited until right now. I think, what's the time right now? It's like 8:40 or something like that.
8:42.
8:42. I waited this long because of the fact that I know as we chatted here, there are a lot of people who don't know the narrative. But 9 years ago today at this time, there was a Bible study going on right inside of this room. There were 9 members of Mother Emanuel Church, including the pastor, the Reverend Clementa Pinckney, Clementa C. Pinckney, who was also a state senator. There were 5 other members, or excuse me, there were 4 other members inside of the space, 3 other members inside of the space that weren't at the Bible study. One was at the Bible study. It's kind of hard to recount all of this. And about 45 minutes earlier, a young white kid who for some reason or other had been taught to hate, and for some reason or other, even though he shouldn't have been able to, was able to buy a gun. About 45 minutes earlier, right around 8 o'clock, he went in the side door over there, which was the entranceway to this basement facility that's behind this wall. Sat for a Bible study for 1 hour. They closed right around 9 o'clock. I think they began to pray out just about a little after 9. He pulled his weapon and started shooting. I don't have the numbers with me today on the amount of bullets that were fired that day. I think he had maybe 8 clips or something like that with him. He reloaded and reloaded. I believe it was like over 100 shell casings found that he fired in that space. The 9 Christians who welcomed him in for Bible study. Come on, have a seat. It was believed, it was said that he was confrontational during that time. Good Brother Jerome, how we doing, brother? Much love to you. All right. That he was somewhat confrontational during the study, but there was no indication that he came. That racial hatred was so ingrained in him that he literally had planned, plotted, and came inside of this space right here to carry out the plan of murdering these believers simply because of the color of their skin. That's insanity. And I waited this long because I'm certain that just like the people across the street, there are those right here who didn't know that all of this was going on 9 years ago at this specific time. At this specific time, I wasn't here on scene. I got a call at right around 9:25. Shooting started just after 9 o'clock. I got one of those lines that people are going to call when something's going on. I got a call from a good friend, Queen Christine Washington. And she said, Pastor, I don't know what's going on downtown at Mother Emanuel Church, but you need to get down there right now. What's going on? I don't know. You need to go downtown. I got up, I got dressed, because I'm old and had literally retired for the evening. My kids were in town, actually. My kids that lived in Columbia at that time. My son and his wife and our grandson, they were in town because this was a stopping point on them taking a vacation. So they were in town. We were at our daughter's house, her and her husband's house, who we stay with. And they know me when I go upstairs, that's it for the night. I came back down the stairs fully dressed and headed out the pop. Where you going? I'm going downtown to Mother Emanuel. I don't know why, but I got a call saying I need to go down there right now. Got to keep track of the time.
8:46.
Okay, good time. I hit the interstate, heading here. When I got here, I parked over by right by Marion Square. I parked over by Marion Square on Meeting Street right there. And I got out of my vehicle and I looked across the street and I saw Raphael James in a camera coming down this side of Meeting Street, headed this way, running, all out. That's one thing I'm not capable of doing is running. So I took on a fast gauge myself about that. I'm like, something is bad going on here. Police lights flashing everywhere, sirens everywhere. And I turned the corner here at the gas station, and I couldn't go any farther because it was taped off. It was red tape. I mean, yes, yellow crime scene tape there. And law enforcement, they were stopping anybody that tried to get through. And of course, because of the work that I've done, I was more or less escorted to a holding spot, a holding place. But no one would actually say what went on. Police were not saying anything. The law enforcement presence was incredible. I'd never seen anything like it. And so, there's a picture on the flyer. Some of you saw the flyer, right? It shows all of us, there's a ring of us that are praying there. That was right over here at the Courtyard Marriott, right there in the little circle. Because not knowing what was going on, all of us serious apprehensions about what's up, knowing that something had happened here. Something had happened. At one point, State Representative he stopped and said something that made more sense than anything else. He said, we need to pray. And that's where that picture that's on the flyer, that's where it came. That was a group of men who had gathered that evening, hearts pounding, panicking, not knowing what was next, and the only word that we knew was it's praying time. And so we prayed. We prayed, and unfortunately, at the end of the prayer, nothing changed. So we wound up being escorted to a staging area that the city had over by the then under construction or reconstruction of the Gilliard Auditorium that was going on. And as we stood there, Mayor Riley came up and Chief Greg Mullins came up to us, and they told us what had happened. That there had been a shooting inside of Mother Emanuel. They didn't say anything about he didn't say anything about the shooting, but there had been a shooting inside of Mother Emanuel. And the question that many had at that time, knowing this was the Reverend Senator Clementa Pinckney, that he was the pastor of this church, the question that was coming in from calls and everything was Clem there? And we didn't know until Mayor Joe Riley stood that night at the staging area right around the corner and said there were 8 dead, 1 had been transported to MUSC, and of the 8 dead, yes, Reverend Pinckney was one. My friends, then and even now, it's one of the most broken points of my life. I still, my heart does not understand or accept that, what was said that night. And didn't even know then anything about the perpetrator. But the fact that hate or somebody with a gun killed 8 people inside of the church. 1 went to the hospital that did not survive. Inside of the church. I didn't understand it, and I don't understand it to this day.
8:51.
Thank you. The reason why we're keeping track of the time is because there's a blessing down here with the church that's right over here by Marion Square. They have a church bell. And on the hour, they toll the hour. And this, 9 years later, from that original night, at 9 o'clock p.m., the bell will toll 9 times. And for each time that the bell tolls, I'll read the names of one of those who lost their lives inside of it. Husbands and wives, mothers. There were children in this space. I'm going to talk more about that after the reading. There were 5 survivors. So in other words, there were 14 people total in the space. 5 who, 2 of which were children, who have had to live with the trauma that they experienced. The trauma for me out here is nothing compared to what they've had to endure in their young lives. They don't understand it. Right along with the lives of the children, the trauma that the children, the family members and the children who survived, you know. I don't get it. I don't understand hatred like that. I don't understand racial hatred theory. I don't understand what would drive one person to take another person's life. Grandmother, I know. The same words I've always shared, it doesn't change. Because I don't understand it, and I will not understand it until it stops. Then I'll understand something. It'll make sense. But here we are, 9 years later, and in this state where the people who are charged to pass legislation, they have denied passing a hate crimes bill when this was definitely a hate crime. The people, some of the senators who are continuing to vote against the hate crimes bill were members of the South Carolina General Assembly along with Senator Clementa Pinckney. They were his friends, or in name only, they were friends.
I think some of them were part of the legislative delegation from this county.
And what's ironic for me, and what really gave me some different thoughts about a lot of things, was the fact that as Senator Pinckney's body lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda, and members of the Senate that he sat in the chambers with and talked to and had fun with, they filed past his funeral bier, and they went and they hugged his wife and said how sorry they were for her loss. and for their 2 little girls and their loss. And some of those same ones who did that then are still blocking a hate crime bill. They didn't mean that. They were just going through the motions. That's all. Now, I'm not going to get into the political aspects of this, but y'all forgive me when I say this. Y'all forgive the pastor for saying it the way I'm going to say it. That's a damn shame. It truly is. In Georgia, after the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, at that time, Georgia, I think, was one of either 4 or 5 states in the United States that didn't have a hate crimes bill. Within 3 months, they passed because that was a hate crime, and they said we need to do something. And here we are in South Carolina 9 years later, and one of 2 remaining states in the United States that does not have a hate crime. That's insane. That's insane. It is embarrassing. It is embarrassing. Especially after this, and it should have gotten international attention. And people touting the quote-unquote holy city for not erupting in violence. The same for North Charleston with Walter Scott. That had happened only a couple of months earlier than that, did not erupt. And that was because of people who were on the ground that night. It had nothing to do with law enforcement. It had nothing to do with politicians. It had nothing to do with any named person out here. It was people out here on the ground who actually intervened and interrupted those who came here with the express purpose of tearing something up that prevented Charleston from burning, not only that night, but over the weeks to come. And as a blessing for myself, being a voice for the community at times, I was able to, after the families came forward, and they said, we don't want any trouble. We don't want any violence in that. That gave me license to call for peace, to call for unity, to call for calm. And myself and my colleagues who had the microphone were able to say at that time, we need peace in the aftermath of this. Stand down.
8:57.
So we're here at 8:57 now. The bells are going to start in a couple of minutes. I'm going to take a pause from rambling on and bending your ear, because as each bell tolls, I'll read the name of one of those who lost their lives inside of this space. This space.
Pastor Jackson,
Yes,
I think this would be a good time to tell people that we really need to focus on voting. But these people that we have voted in are not going to do the things that we need to be done to make our communities better. Then you need to use your constitutional right in order to vote to get rid of them. It's not just going to happen by wishing these things stop. Our forefathers died so we could vote. Like, I don't get the fact that you don't want to vote because it doesn't matter. Every single vote matters. If you want to see a change, then vote. Then get rid. Yes, especially this year. Like, it's, if you're going to be about it, be about it. Do something about it.
So yes, we'll definitely touch on the voting aspect of it. But right now, on June 17th, 2015, at Mother Emanuel AME Church, 9 years ago, 9 lives were cut short due to gun violence. A moment of silence as we wait on the bell to toll. And the reading of the names will be fast.
Sir. Sir.
So as 9 o'clock has struck, let me read the names. And the bell hopefully will catch up with me. The Reverend Senator Clementa C. Pinckney. The Reverend Daniel Simmons. The Reverend Sharonda Coleman-Singleton. Tywanza Sanders. Ethel Lee Lance. Susie Jackson. Myra Thompson. Cynthia Graham Hurd. Reverend Depayne Middleton-Doctor. These 9 lives were cut short in this space right behind us, right behind this wall, cut short by racial hatred, armed, and it's just that simple. There's no other way to look at it. And for the 9th year that we've been here, this is the first time that the bells did not toll. I don't know what the message is in there, but I believe that for everything there's a reason. There's a purpose for everything. Maybe it'll be revealed in the sweet by and by, I don't know. But the irony is that even 9 years afterward, though, the perpetrator, that kid's in, even though incarcerated, he is still celebrating birthdays and holidays, getting letters and phone calls. While that 9 that were inside of this space and the hearts that were knit to theirs through life. We all here know what it's like to love someone and to have had someone in our life for years, and then suddenly they're no longer with us. We all know the pain of that. But when it comes to innocent life taken suddenly because of someone with a gun, that pain goes to levels that many of us in our pain over losing a loved one don't go to. We don't get there. This town has been broken, and it remains broken to this day, and there are many who are walking around with unaddressed trauma, some of whom you see right here, right now, who just wish there was an explanation, some reason to know why. Why the insanity? 9 years ago, 9 lives were taken from us in less than a half hour. As a matter of fact, it was minutes. I think the shooting was like 4 or 5 minutes long. And he calmly exited the building and got his car and drove off. Was caught, I think, the next day, wasn't it? And then taken to Burger King for a Happy Meal. What kind of message is that? message is that? Oh, you hold on, you killed 9 black people in a church. And we'll stop by and get you a happy meal on the way to jail. I really appreciate it, William, but many times when I've been in the backseat of that car, they ain't never did that to me. And it was over some serious charges. They ain't never offered me a happy meal. Only thing I got was a cold bologna sandwich and some cold coffee when I got to lockup. That was it. But I get you. I get you.
How old was this person?
At the time? Something like that, yeah. Raised in it, out of Lexington, South Carolina. Yeah, definitely had all of the flags and all the signs and everything of being racist. So following the racist ideology, the Confederate flag and all of that.
What's so sad is he had to be taught that because he was not born into all of that still prevalent. Secretly, yes. But
he was on the left side of the Council of Conservative Citizens of Old Rock, which used to be the White Citizens Council. That's what he was talking about.
And that access to that type of information and indoctrination is more accessible now than it's ever been, and it's growing. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why civil rights advocates are always targets out here. My name, my picture, my family's information has been shared in those sites countless numbers of times. But I cannot, like many of us who have been assigned this walk, we don't walk in fear because other lives are at stake. We gather here today to remember what happened 9 years ago so that hopefully someone will hear and change their mind instead of doing the same thing that guy did that night. 9 years ago, 9 lives were taken from us that didn't have to die. Politically, a legal loophole put a gun in the hand of hate. A hate based solely on the color of skin. And now here we are, 9 years later, 108 months later, 468 weeks later, 3,287 days later, 78,840 hours later, and 4,730,400 minutes later, and we are no safer now than the 9 who died behind this wall on the night of June 17, 2015. What happened then could very well happen again right now, because nothing has changed. And the only way it will change is because of people like you all, who have remembered these laws, who, even though you might not have experienced the same pain, you've embraced the pain that this caused. You've embraced the pain that some in America have experienced while others haven't. You've embraced that pain, and you've allowed that pain to do one thing that a lot of people don't do, and that's to step up and to stand out, even if it's just to come out tonight. 10,000 people a week later stood on the Ravenel Bridge, what they call the Unity Bridge, and they sang songs and held hands, and it was a kumbaya moment. And to tell you the truth, I did not go because I realized in my heart, having been in this for a very long time, that those same 10,000, 2 months later, would be back to business as usual because they did not feel the pain. It was symbolic. Just like taking that flag down, that red rag down from the State House Capitol grounds was symbolic, because racism and the ability of a white supremacist to do exactly what that guy did that night is still prevalent. You know that they brought Steve Bannon, the Citadel Republican Society, brought Steve Bannon down here 2 years later. It was 2017, was it? 2017. 2 years later, to speak at their annual dinner. What is that, 3 or 4 miles from here? The white nationalist. Somebody who talked crazy about what went on here. They brought him, they thought it was all right. But we kind of showed them that night, didn't we? We gathered together, I think like maybe 300-400 strong at that gathering, outside that gathering, just to let them know, this ain't cool. It's not what we do. First off, we're human beings. We should endeavor to do everything we can to love one another and to ensure that others around us are not hurt. That's our obligation to each other. That should be our priority. But aside from that, we're Americans. We're Americans. And we talk about land of the free and home of the brave. But for who? We talk about a nation that's with liberty and justice for all, but that's a lie that has been in place for how long? And love dictates that if it's not the truth, then we make it the truth and put into place the things that will make this that nation with liberty and justice for all, where 9 people will never again go inside of a church space and be assassinated because of the color of their skin, where our Jewish brothers and sisters will never go inside of a synagogue as they did at the Tree of Life in Pittsburgh and perish because of their faith, because of their ethnicities. That it'll never happen again, such as in Orlando, Florida at Pulse nightclub, where 49 were killed as they were just out enjoying themselves because they were members of the LGBTQ community. That's not the America that I know and the America that I love. That's this bastardized America that says that if you don't agree with what I agree with, then I can kill you over it. If you don't look like I expect you to look like, then I can kill you over it. If you don't worship like I think you should worship, I can kill you. And we have legislators, because the killing is 99% done with the gun, who refuse to do anything about the guns except for give more guns. What kind of sense does that make? So I'm going to get off my soapbox here and turn this over to some others, but before I do, I want to make sure that we remember some others, because a lot of you all don't know that, first off, on this same night, June 17th, 33 years ago, there was an explosion in the northern end of the city of Charleston at a chemical company called Albright Wilson. 9 people died in that explosion. 9 people died in that explosion 33 years ago, June 17th, 1991. And tomorrow marks the 14th year since 9 firefighters died in the Sofa Superstore fire. 9 firefighters, June 18th, 2007. I don't know the names of those who perished at Albright Wilson, but I would like to read the names of the firefighters also, because we are one community no matter what. And the firefighters, they were a racial group. Their ages were different. Where they lived, that was different. They weren't all just Charleston County people. But their names, because we definitely want to remember them also. Captain William Billy Hutchinson, Captain Mike Baker, Captain Lewis Mulkey, Engineer Mark Kelsey, Engineer Brad Beatty, Assistant Engineer Michael French, Firefighter James Earl Drayton, Firefighter Brandon Thompson, and Firefighter Melvin Champagne. A moment of silence for them also. Thank you.
Well, now that I have your attention, a couple of things I want to mention here briefly is that this church was targeted for a very important reason, and that is its history. You see, there was a time when this was known as the Hempstead African Church. It was over on the east side, over on Hanover and American Street, back in the 1800s. But what happened was that in 1822, a secret plot was hatched there, known as the Denmark-Vesey Rebellion. And because of the Denmark-Vesey Rebellion, people told on him, and Denmark-Vesey and 34 of his followers were executed 202 years ago on July the 2nd, 1822. So they had the church demolished. Contrary to popular belief, the mythology is that the white people burned the church down. That wasn't true. The city outlawed the church and had it demolished. But in 1865, there was a Bishop Daniel Alexander Payne who was run out of Charleston because he was teaching African Americans to read and write over on Tradd Street. And because Denmark-Vesey used the Bible, history books, and the Constitution to encourage revolution, the state of South Carolina made it illegal to teach African Americans to read and write. So he went to Xenia, Ohio, where he started Wilberforce College, the first black college in America that was run by black people. And so one of his students, Bishop Richard Harvey King, came down here and rebuilt the church at this location, saying that this would be the mother of the new black churches in Charleston, and he named it Emanuel after the Hebrew word for God is with us. So, in 1886, that building was destroyed by the earthquake that took place on August 31st, but it was rebuilt in 1891 by a Reverend Field, who was mentioned up here. Now, in 1898, they had an anti-lynching rally here, and they sent a letter to a great woman warrior by the name of Miss Ida B. Wells, who went to President William McKinley demanding that he stop lynching. He never did. But that same bill came back again in 2022, and President Biden signed it as the Emmett Till Ida B. Wells Anti-Lynching Act, which it had its beginnings right here in 1898. Booker T. Washington, the great educator, spoke here in 1901. Paul Laurence Dunbar, the great poet, spoke here in 1904. Martin Luther King spoke here April 12, 1962. I spoke to Senator Cory Booker when he was here, and I was here when President Biden was here. So this church has a long history of that kind of activism, and Dylan chose this church deliberately, knowing its sacred history, because he did the research, figuring that it would start a race war. We beat him at that game.
Amazing. You know, it's one thing that we always try to do is to make sure that as we have gatherings that the history is brought forward. I think it's very important, especially at a time when Black history is the subject of eradication in the United States, which I don't understand. But it is what it is. It's just another fight. Just as much of a fight that was created by the deaths that happened here. So what I want to do now, though, thank you very much for elaborating and enlightening us. We want to give a shout to Marlena Davis. Yes, who unfortunately was not able to be with us this evening. But this is the first time that she hasn't been here. And she's really, if you ask Damon or myself, the reasons why we gather every year, if we have to put a reason other than the sacredness of this night.
She cried out to, I'm sorry.
She's here with us.
Yeah, she's
watching.
The night, the 1 year anniversary, she cried out that she hoped that this thing wouldn't be forgotten like other occasions of this kind. And we both promised we won't let that happen. And so that's why we've been doing this every year since. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. You did right. You know, I'm not biggity like that. But is that word? Exactly.
Become ordinary, they shall become inevitable.
Exactly. So, is there anybody else that would like to share? You know, this is, you know, I've spouted out long enough. But hey.
Good evening.
We would just ask that you got to speak a little louder because we don't have amplification.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Brendan Patman. I've been living in Greater Charleston since the beginning of 2012 and in my present Mount Pleasant condo since December 2013. I remember the night of the shooting. I was at a karaoke at the place which was called then it's now the Topsail restaurant on Coleman Boulevard. Remember, it was Wednesday night every karaoke, and somebody walked in, and we were all shocked to hear that there had been a shooting downtown. And then as the night wore on, and then the next day I got more details. But that's my memory, just like I always hear my elders say about how they remember exactly where they were and what they were doing. When they heard that President Kennedy had been shot dead, I figured, sorry if it sounds frivolous, but that's what I was doing when I heard the news about here.
I think it's important to remember that these people did a lot more than die. Saturday before this happened, a lot of us were at Sullivan's Island, and we had a program on the Middle Passage. We went out behind the fort, and they did a libation, and they put the fruit and the vegetables on the ground in the African tradition. And then everybody walked down to the edge of the harbor. It's one of the most historic spots in the entire area. It's the place where during the American Revolution where they beat the British fleet. It's the place where Major Anderson abandoned Fort Moultrie to go to Fort Sumter. And several of the people that stood on that beach and walked to the edge of the water that day were in this church that night. As were some other people we've lost, like my wife. We don't live forever. We have to decide what to do with our time. The terror of living in South Carolina is to divide your time between caring for the people you love and trying to keep terrible things from happening. And I would give a great deal to be able to tell you exactly how to do that. I'm glad you're here. When you go home, love the people in your life. Make absolutely certain they know it. If you see Elizabeth Hurd standing on the beach, the one that sat beside you all those years, snatching all the paper away from you because you can't be trusted to file it, give her a hug. She don't, you know, it really is true. Life is tough, and then you die, and you can't go to the beach anymore. But I remember them on that beach with our historic harbor in front of them, all wearing white. That's how I remember them. I don't remember them here in this room. I remember them in the sun on that pretty beach, remembering the history, honoring their ancestors.
My name is Anna Daniels-Olomaro. I am a social worker here in the state of South Carolina. This is my friend, the Reverend Depayne Doctor. She was my good friend. She was my sister. She was my confidant. We raised our girls together, and the Christmas before she died, we had the opportunity to spend that last holiday together. What I must say in Depayne's honor is that as much as Depayne loved the Lord, she loved justice. And she loved people so much and wanted so much for people that she knew, people that she didn't know. And so in honor of Depayne, I would simply like to say this. Sometimes we are confused by the fact that it's important for us to mind our own business. Sometimes we think that that's what we're supposed to do, that we're supposed to quietly walk along life, mind our own business, keep our heads down, focus only on what concerns us. And that is not the will of God for your life. I hate to tell you it, but it's not. God created us to be brothers. He created us to be sisters. He created us to be family. He created us to be community. And He created us to be acquainted with the grief of the person that stands next to us, and the person that stands behind us, and the person that's not equal with us, and the person that reminds us of somebody that he doesn't or we don't like. He created us to be acquainted with that grief. And so I ask you, in honor of not only my friend Depayne, but the 8 other people that you see on these pictures here, this is the year that I am asking you to become acquainted with the grief that we face. We have a job to do. We must vote. We cannot continue to allow our voices to be silent. We cannot continue to allow our voices to only be the focus of our own dreams and things that we desire to do. We must speak for the less fortunate. We must speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. We must speak for those we love. We must speak for those we hate. We are even called to speak for those that we don't know. So if you don't leave here with anything else tonight, I ask that you leave with the fervor in your heart to do what you can, to use your voice, whether your circle is small, whether your circle is large, whether you don't have a circle and you stand on the side of a square. I don't care what you do. But whatever it is you do it to the best of your ability. Use your voice and use your power to create the change that needs to be made. Last July 28th, approximately 4-something in the morning, my niece was murdered, suffered gun violence, okay? And this year, not 6 weeks ago, her killer, allegedly, let me say that, allegedly was set free to not be bothered anymore. The grief, her grandmother is right here, the grief that we have in our hearts is immeasurable. To have to stand here and remember 9 years ago that my good friend was taken, and to have to stand here and think about the fact that less than a year ago my niece was murdered. It is beyond me that we don't have a hate bill in South Carolina. It is beyond me that we don't have more information about gun violence and that we are not doing what we can. I am a mental health professional. There is no way that certain people should have the ability to have guns, to shoot and kill others for the sake of the color of my skin. That makes no sense to me. So in all that you do something to be acquainted with the grief of someone else.
Thank you.
Grandmother, just a second.
No, go ahead. Well, I just want to say, I have my own grief, my granddaughter, but I think it's important that everyone knows that every single one of these people had a purpose in their life. It ended on June 17th, so they say, but actually it began on June 17th. As horrific as it was, each and every one of them had their own personal victory of what needs to be done. As my cousin said, there's no easy way to put this. If you don't like the way things are going, use your voting ability to change what's happening. It's not going to go away by saying, oh, that's sad, and oh, I don't, it's unfortunate. No, do something about it. If these people you elected are not doing their job, get rid of them. Get rid of them. Because the gun laws especially now in South Carolina, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, like you can just go outside and bump into somebody and, oh, I'm gonna kill you. I feel threatened. Really? This is horrible. This is horrible. And coming out and being raised in the civil rights movement, oh, I'll never forget. I can't. You know, a lot of people I asked if they would come tonight. You know why some people said they wouldn't come? Because they was afraid that someone that was a part of a white hate crime would come and try to gun all of us down. You know? But I serve a true God. I serve one that sits high and looks low. And listen, y'all better get your prayer life together, because all kind of stuff is going on. Because it could be me today, these families 9 years ago, but guess what? It can be any of y'all tomorrow. Especially if you got grandchildren and nieces and nephews, and you know, I don't like what you said. I don't like who you were, and I'm going to kill you. You have a right to bear arms. 18-year-olds. My granddaughter, 30 years old. 30 years old. Nothing but her life to live. I'm pretty sure it could have been handled differently. With 7 children. Come on, man. What do you tell her children? Oops, she felt threatened. You felt so threatened that you had to kill her. That is so scary. That is so scary. Because me and my family today, I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking. Because it very well could happen to any of us, right? Any of us. Bible study. Who does that in church? I'm sure they welcomed him with open arms. Like, come on, we glad you're here. Based on the fact that you're white.
I can see one of them right now.
Yes.
You know how we do at church.
Come on in. We want you here. We don't want you to feel unwanted. And look where it got them. God is not dead. He's still alive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Danielle Richardson. I am the South Carolina president for Grady United Against Gun Violence, which is the first organized gun violence prevention organization straight out of Washington, D.C. that was created by Mr. Grady, who was shot along with Ronald Reagan many moons ago, about 1989. And right after Mother Emanuel shooting, Grady came down and he was reformed. And I became a mother, and now I am the sitting president. I'd like to let y'all know that June is also Gun Violence Awareness Month, where all the presidents and activists, we go out and we spread the love and support for to the survivors first, and also to let the public know about what gun violence really is. For me, it's very hard looking at all these pictures, because before I got anything to do with anything at Brady, I knew each and every one of them because I am a part of the EMU Church. And I've seen each and every one of them and passed them for many, many years. My daughters, their dads, and Chris' dad. So it's really hard to really know that we are back here again. It's 9 years, but you will never forget. In honor of the National Gun Violence Month, is called Wear Arms Day, and I have a few shirts that says freedom from gun violence. If anybody would like some, I do have some. there at no charge. Thank you.
Can you explain why?
So, I'm with Brady United also. I'm on the National Board of Trustees. And I knew about Brady United Against Gun Violence before Mother Emanuel, but I actually got connected with them in the aftermath of Mother Emanuel when they sent a representative here to Charleston. And I've been working in gun violence prevention for quite a while at that time. So I am on the National Board of Trustees. Danielle is our state president. Now the Orange, this started in, I believe it was 2012, 2013. There was a shooting in Chicago on the near South Side. There was a young girl by the name of Hadiah Pendleton. The week before, she had actually been in Washington, D.C. with a group at the request of Michelle Obama. And they had seen President Obama, and they had sat and heard and everything, and came back. And this was like, the next week was like exam week, and she had finished her exams and had gone to a space outside of Martin Luther King High School on Chicago's South Side. Same high school my wife graduated from many moons ago. But as she stood there, gunfire rang out, and she was hit and killed. She was struck and killed. Young high school student, life ahead of her, killed. Her name was Hadiah Pendleton. Now, her classmates, they were trying to figure out what can we do to honor her. In the aftermath of her death, what can we do to honor her? And somebody said, you know, it might be a good idea if we do something with the color orange. Maybe we can make a shirt or something with the color orange. And they said, why orange? Well, if you stop and think about it, orange is the international color that hunters use in the forest to show that there's a human, don't shoot. Don't shoot. And that's why we wear orange, and June is a specific month, for designated as Gun Violence Awareness Month. And it's in honor of Hadiah Pendleton. And her classmates are the ones that came up with this, and they continue to advocate against gun violence. Because, you know, we do have the mass shooting situation here, the racial hatred-inspired shooting here. But we also have that other level of gun violence, and it's black self-hatred that's killing black people in the community, a community that doesn't manufacture guns and normally doesn't even have gun stores in or around the community, but those guns flood our communities. Everything from little bitty guns to great big guns. And you have little children that have those guns all the way up into all illegal possessions. And that's another area that, as our legislators look at it, they have to look at. And that's one of the things that Brady advocates in order to address. And that's the prolific amount of guns that are in our communities. There are more guns in America than there are people.
Excuse me for a second. I want to throw this up because it's necessary that I say this. That about two years ago this summer, I was myself and a group who were in Gambia, West Africa, when the shooting took place at that school in Texas, as well as up in Buffalo, New York. And our African host, it was, you know, as you're an American and you've been overseas when things like that happen, it's very embarrassing, to put it mildly, right? But we had to explain to them, they couldn't understand that because in several countries of West Africa, guns are banned except for the military and the police. And we explained to them that that couldn't happen here because of the Second Amendment and the gun culture, and they just found that so difficult to comprehend. But yet, we the ones that say we civilized and they backwards, so you make that make sense.
Yeah. So in closing, we'll close with a prayer, with a brief prayer. Especially since we've gone down the avenue of gun violence, coupled in with what happened. Because what happened here is gun violence. It's another level of gun violence. I'm going to say this about guns in the United States because I hear those proponents, and I'm not anti-Second Amendment. I believe that anybody that qualifies to have a weapon, a firearm, should be able to have a weapon. Not just anybody should have a gun, okay? But those who support and are adamant and vehement about their support of the Second Amendment, they like to say, guns make us safer. Well, if that's the case, then the United States, with more guns than we have people, we should be the safest nation in the world. But instead, we're the nation where you are more apt to be killed by a gun than any other nation in the world. So that argument doesn't work at all. And unfortunately, 9 years ago tonight, a kid who should not have been able to get a gun, but he was able to get it because the background check that was submitted did not come back within 3 days, and the law said after 3 days the dealer could sell it anyway to that person. That's how he got the gun. That's how he traveled from Lexington, South Carolina to Charleston, South Carolina to this location, went inside this space, sat with a group of Christians who showed him love, and at the end of Bible study, he opened fire and killed. Let's say a word of prayer. Now, I'm a minister of the Christian faith. That's my faith tradition, and I know that everybody is not Christian, okay? I'm not naive about this. So if you're not Christian, then pray according to your own faith tradition, please. There's no kind of obligation. This is a safe space, okay? Whatever your faith tradition is. If you're an atheist or an agnostic, it's okay. It's okay in this space. But we're going to pray briefly according to my tradition. Father, on this night, as we remember the horrific tragedy that occurred in this space 9 years ago, as we stand here today, our hearts burdened by what happened, we ask that you, through your Holy Spirit, will reach down and touch each one of us deep in our hearts, that we will be able to know that in spite of all of this, that you love us even when we don't love ourselves and we don't love each other. That out of this tragedy, somewhere or another, even though we might not see it ourselves, that there is a triumph somewhere. No, we don't understand it. Yes, we do ask why. Many say we're not supposed to question you, Lord, but our natural self says why. And when we come back with that response that says there's no answer for it, the only thing we can do is turn to you and just say, by faith, we just believe in you, that you have our best intentions at heart. Show us the way, Father, that we can make the change in our nation. Show us how we can manifest that four-letter word of love the same way that you love to others in this world. That overwhelming love that we show to others will overwhelm them and break them of the cycle of violence and racism and hatred and all of these things, because love does conquer all. Help us to be your ambassadors in a world that desperately needs those who are not afraid to love and are not afraid to speak of love. Help us, Lord, to be the change agents that you would have us to be in this world. I pray this prayer in our Savior's name, and I ask that blessing in his name. Amen and amen. So all, thank you all so much for coming out. Once again, we appreciate you all so much. Take care, one and all. Drive safely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All righty. Oh, we good to go. All righty. Yeah. Well, we're closing down. I want to thank Alan Morris for holding the phone here for that extended version there. I want to thank you. Love you. You okay? Yeah, I know. I know. That's why to look up and see you is a blessing. Yeah, absolutely. No. That's it. No judgment here. You're in a judgment-free zone here. That's what we do. All righty. All righty. Y'all take care, everybody. I'm going to close this on out. I'll holler at y'all later. Peace.